Many have claimed the phrase, speaking truth to power. Some are pretty powerful people justifying their own beliefs. But it was first coined in 1955 by a Quaker as a title for a pamphlet calling on the U.S. to change the course of the Cold War by unilaterally disarming. It is a powerful phrase that resonates for us. It rings of courage and righteousness, and with more than a hint of danger. I think it's why the politically satirical Daily Show with Jon Stewart, who does this nightly, is a global phenomenon. Few of us would be displeased to know that it was said at our funeral, she or he spoke truth to power. Yes, that sounds like high praise. And it's why the story of Nathan confronting David's adultery with Bathsheba grips us. We see Nathan in heroic terms, cloaked with righteous indignation, pointing his finger at David and saying, "You are the man." The appeal of the story lies in our being hardwired to be outraged by abusive power. Even David felt it, to his later regret. When the abuser is confronted and condemned, we find it wholly satisfying, kind of like being served a plate heaped high with our favorite comfort food. In this case, the meal is revenge, and we all know it's best served cold. But this is a meal that can give us indigestion. While outrage may motivate us to speak truth to power, outrage is not a very good indicator of what truth is. If it were, the same thing would outrage all of us. This week in New Zealand, there seems to be universal outrage over a conflict between MP Paula Bennett and two young mothers on benefits that assist them in going to school. But our outrage is not in agreement. Some are outraged that a person in power released private information to intimidate her critics. And others are outraged at the amount of the benefit the women received and the nerve they had in complaining about its insufficiency. While people on both sides are savoring their righteous indignation, the truth they seek to speak seems to be more about their personal motives, experiences, values, and prejudices than some external truth. That's the problem with truth. How do we know it when we see it, that we might speak it? Clearly, trusting our gut is not sufficient. Perhaps it's in trusting authority. Let's look again at David and Nathan's encounter as an example. We know in our gut that David acted horribly. We also know in our gut that Nathan acted courageously. And if our gut didn't tell us, Holy Scripture makes it clear. But is our gut or Scripture equally appalled at God, who directed Nathan to confront David? Or did it escape our notice that God, calling David on the carpet for betraying him, and this is definitely a male deity, helped David betray Saul, and then gave his wives and kingdom to him? Did we notice that the God who condemns David's murder of Uriah punishes him by murdering David's infant son? What is truth? Is betrayal, murder, and adultery wrong when David does it on his own? but okay when God condones or facilitates it? If we are outraged at David, shouldn't we be equally outraged at the one who condemns him? Scripture doesn't seem to think so. This double message as to truth in the story raises questions about the story's veracity. Why was it told in the first place? Is it factual history or propaganda? Who is telling the story? Certainly no one who is a friend of David's or seeks to curry favor from him. One of the things that makes the story suspect is that it is unlikely Nathan said these things to any king at the time. He would not have survived longer than it took for the words to leave his mouth. Never mind being able to tell of the encounter later. So if the story was manufactured, who benefited? Some scholars think it was Bathsheba, who was in a power struggle with David's other wives over who should succeed David as king. When Absalom, David's favorite, was killed, certainly Bathsheba and her ally Nathan didn't shed any tears, for it left the door wide open for her son, Solomon. This story may have been about giving Solomon's rise to power legitimacy. Later, it may have been useful to Solomon to justify building the temple that David failed to build and which many objected to building. Frankly, no one knows the truth. It is lost in the political intrigues of the day and the power struggles of later editors. So if the truth we feel is too subjective, and the truth we are told by authorities lacks our own input or ability to verify, perhaps we need another indicator of truth. Maybe reason will work for us. Reason's virtue is that it relies on our intellectual resources, but can be subjected to external test. We can try a test now. If I tell you this morning it's Tuesday, and I've worked it out reasonably, am I right? How many agree it's Tuesday? But if I tell you it's, thank you, Fergus. If I tell you this morning it's Sunday in Auckland, it can be tested by the calendar and by the opinions of others. It is the middle position between relying on our passions and relying on authority. It is particularly attractive to the likes of Christopher Hitchens and other secular humanists, as they see it as a means to dismiss belief systems altogether. You see, I don't have to consult the Bible to know if it's Sunday. I don't have to feel it in my gut that it's Sunday. Reason gets me to the truth.